You say that what's happening to men is a 5-alarm fire for men in the United States. Tell us what's going on as you see it.
Well, the statistics are pretty stark. If you walk into a morgue and there's 5 people who've died by suicide, 4 are men. 3 times as likely. We have a homeless problem and an opiate problem, but what we really have is a male homeless and a male opiate problem. 3 times as likely to be addicted, 3 times as likely to be homeless, 12 times as likely to be incarcerated. More single women own homes than single men. Women in urban areas are making more money. And let me be clear, we should do nothing to get in the way of that. But if our young men continue to flail, our country and women aren't going to continue to flourish. And just a couple of things you brought up, loneliness and then role models. 1 out of 4 men can't name a best friend. 1 out of 7 men don't have a single friend. And what I would say is there's a lot of factors around this, but something to be cognizant of is that...
Can I just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Is that unusual? Is that new?
It's getting worse. And typically when a man isn't in... Women are relationally more invested or more talented establishing relationships. And typically they use their friends as a means of gaining confidence to enter into a romantic relationship, whereas a man, if he doesn't have a relationship by the time he's 30, there's a 1 in 3 chance he'll be a substance abuser. And also, there's a cartoon Oprah of the poor woman in her 30s that didn't find romantic love, and she's in a big sweater looking out on a rainy day, listening to sad music. What a tragedy. That's a cartoon. The reality is men need relationships much more than women. Widows are happier after their husband dies. Widowers, it's true, widowers are less happy. Women live longer in relationships. They live 2 to 4 years longer. Men live 4 to 7 years longer. So men actually need relationships more. What I would argue, or what I would be cognizant of the fact when you're talking about loneliness, is you're up against the deepest pocketed, most talented companies in the world with godlike technology who are trying to do one thing, and that is sequester you from your other relationships. They're either trying to get you to glued to the phone, and one of the ways they glue you to the phone is by enraging you, elevating content that makes you angry at your neighbor, elevate content that makes you start blaming the other gender or blaming immigrants for your problems.
And this is being done on purpose.
Well, they didn't start out as malicious, but I'm in marketing. We used to think that it was sex that sells. Then the algorithms found something that sells even more in terms of gluing you to a screen, and that is rage. So I'm not suggesting we censor these folks, but they will elevate content. They will figure out your political leanings, your fears, and then start elevating content that enrages you, because enragement equals engagement equals shareholder value. So keep in mind, the amount of time you spend on a screen as a young man, and biologically, your prefrontal cortex isn't as developed as a woman. It doesn't catch up until you're 25. The executive function, the need for dopa, is much more dangerous in a young man. Keep in mind that you will find they are trying to essentially convince you can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen. So keep in mind, you are up against a foe that is trying to separate you from the outside world. And very simply, mathematically, the more time you spend on a screen, the less likely you are to have loving relationships, the less money you're going to make, the more likely you are going to be to engage in self-harm, the more likely you are going to blame other people. In sum, the worse your life gets based on how much time you spend on a screen. We are mammals. We are meant to be outside and in the company of others. And we have for-profit companies trying to convince you to go the other way. So you're up against some very significant foes. On the idea of role models, the single point of failure, if you reverse engineered a boy coming off the tracks, is when he loses a male role model through either death, divorce, or abandonment. We have more single-parent homes than any nation in the world other than Sweden. And what's interesting is that girls in single-parent homes have the same outcome, same rates of college attendance, same income as dual-parent homes. A boy, when he loses a male role model, at that moment is more likely to be incarcerated than graduate from college. What it ends up is that while boys are physically stronger, they're emotionally and mentally much weaker. And what we need, quite frankly, is we need more men to step up and fill the void. There are 3 times as many women applying to be big sisters in New York as there are men applying to be big brothers. So we have an obligation to get involved in a young man's life, right? And it's just to summarize here, if we want better men, we have to be better men.
Well, I have to say, I think of this book, Notes on Being a Man, as a guidebook, and from your personal perspective, for how men can begin to show up in the world. You talk about that, everything from fitness to nutrition to money to work, and how to meet women. The thing that struck me was that men 18 to 25, 45% of men 18 to 25 have not engaged personally on asking a woman out for a date, or I find that to be shocking.
Almost half of young men have never asked a woman out in person. And there's a bunch of factors around that. One, it's difficult. I mean, it's just not easy. One of the key skills I think a man has to treat or try and give his son is to how to express romantic interest while making that person feel safe. And this is only anecdotal evidence. When I go out and I'm in social situations, I'll have women approach me and say, I'm here, I'm single and I'm ready to mingle, I look amazing, and a man hasn't approached me in 3 months, right? And 80% of women still expect the man to make that initial approach. And also, to a certain extent, men's interest in romantic and sexual relationships has been pathologized. Like there's something wrong if you want to meet women and ultimately have sex. And I think we need to start celebrating it, because a man's desire to be in a relationship and, quite frankly, to have physical encounters is fire. And that is, it can be destructive. You spend too much time with porn, you start objectifying women, it can lead to misogynist or dangerous places. But that fire can also be captured in an engine and create tremendous progress. Wanting to have sex, if channeled correctly, which it is for most men, makes you want to dress better, smell better, have a kindness practice, have your act together, develop the resilience and the confidence to approach someone, and maybe they're not interested, and guess what? You're both going to be fine. These are key attributes. We need to celebrate men wanting to have relationships and making an approach. And if you don't develop those skills and that resilience and those calluses from rejection, you're going to struggle in other parts of your life. So the most rewarding thing in life is relationships, full stop. And I think the most rewarding relationship is building a life with someone and having kids. I'm not saying you have to have that to be happy. And quite frankly, just to be raw about this, when I saw my partner who I've had kids with, I wasn't thinking I'd really like lower rates on auto insurance. I was thinking, just to be blunt, I would really like to have sex with her. And that forced me to be a better person, to try to have a kindness practice, to demonstrate excellence. And 18 months later, we had our first son. So let's stop demonizing men for wanting to procreate. It's a wonderful thing as long as you channel it into wanting to be a better man. The only thing I can guarantee you is that anything wonderful in your life is going to have a lot of no's. Full stop. And unfortunately, men aren't getting to know because they're afraid to, or they have what they think is a cheap substitute for these relationships online.